Good evening. Good evening to each of you. I am Dr. Corrine Johnson, and I would like to welcome each of you on this evening to Proverbs 31 Wife Daily Devotions. Good evening once again to each of you, and welcome, welcome, welcome. We thank God for each of you on tonight for tuning in with us for another edition of Proverbs 31 Wife. And this is a platform that the Lord has given me to empower wives in their ministry as a wife. And so on tonight, we're going to be talking about some of the mistakes that we make as wives when we feel unappreciated. Because I know that for some of us that a lot of times we feel unappreciated within our marriage because a lot of us work every day. And so sometimes it can be overwhelming to actually have to go to work and then come home and prepare dinner, assist with children's homework if you have children. And then you got to minister to your husband. And then to think that by the time you get to bed, the next day you got to do the same thing all over again. And so I can imagine that sometimes, especially when you don't have a husband that kind of helps out with the chores, that can sometimes become frustrating to us as wives and make us feel like we're really not appreciated. And so a lot of times, women feel like, that they're the ones that's holding down the family. When in actuality, we know that God has ordained for the husband to be the one that actually leads the family. So a lot of times when we put in a lot of effort as wives, and then we notice that those efforts are going unappreciated, and nobody wants to feel unappreciated in a marriage. And so we must understand that whenever your husband may not acknowledge that, baby, I appreciate everything that you do, or maybe even suggest to jump in and lend a helping hand, once again, it can be overwhelming for many of us and causes us to display, unhappiness and frustration and aggravation within the marriage. But however, when these things take place, sometimes there are some mistakes that we make as wives. And the first mistake that I want to talk about that we do is we start complaining, about the frustration. We start complaining about, our aggravation to anybody that will listen. And that's not a good thing. And so we must learn that in effective communication, and we've talked about that before, how, when things are going on that, and you feel a certain way, instead of bottling it in and holding it in on the inside, you need to express it. But there's a way that you need to express it. And so because your husband does need to know how you feel. But once again, there's a way in which you have to express it to him. And we talked about how when he first comes in from work, that's not a good time to express it because he's tired. He wants to wind down. He wants to get something to eat, and he don't want to be bombarded with things that are going on time he walks through the door. So pick a time in the evening times when he's settled down and go to him and say, sweetheart, I have something, that I would like to talk to you about. Is now a good time for you? And instead of telling everybody that has a listening ear, go to your husband and explain to him how you feel. And when you go to him, don't go to him saying, you always sitting down. You don't ever do anything to help me. You. Because the first thing that he's going to do is put up a wall. Because when you start expressing to him what he's not doing and pointing fingers and saying he's going to automatically shut down. So you have to go to him and say, sweetheart, I feel like, that I'm doing all of the work. And I feel that because we're supposed to be a team, that maybe you could help me with some of the chores around the house to make my load easier. So when you go using our words, expressing how you feel, instead of going into attack mode and saying, you don't do this and you don't do that, it opens his spirit up to be able to receive what you're saying. But one of the mistakes, once again, that we make is we tell everybody around town and we never really express, how we feel to our mate. The next thing the mistake that we make when we feel unappreciated as wives and when the frustration sets in, the next thing that we tend to do, which is a big mistake, is that we hold sex. We withhold it to get even, with the person that we feel like is doing us wrong. We feel like our husband is not fulfilling all of our wonderful desires that we won't fulfill or doing what we want to do. We will withhold sex, and that is a wrong action to take. And the reason why it is a wrong action to take is because it's not really solving anything by you withholding it. Because over time, what begins to take place is once you withhold it for long periods of time, unless that man is saved, sanctified, and shown up filled with the Holy Spirit, you're gonna push him to a place to where he starts looking outwardly to have those needs met. And I'm not saying that that's right, because it's not right, but in most cases, that's exactly what begins to take place. And so we cannot make the mistake of, when we feel unappreciated, to think that if we withhold sex because we know that they need it and want it, that it's going to make them do what we want them to do. That's a mistake that we make as wives. The next mistake that we tend to make when we feel unappreciated is we display a constant negative attitude. And there is absolutely no way to handle frustration. That's no way to handle it. When you're supposed to be in a grown-up marriage, you're not going to walk around not speaking to one another. You're not going to walk around having a negative attitude. When he asks you, baby, you seen my belt? No, I don't know where it at. You go look for it. I don't know where it at. When you're displaying a negative attitude, you got to understand that that's a sign of immaturity in marriage. And so the attitude and negativity, it serves no purpose, other than to make everybody in the marriage miserable. Because the more you walk around with an attitude that you could be taking all of that negative energy and focusing in on a solution and going to your husband and talking to him and communicating effectively with him about how you really feel about the situation at hand. You know, the next mistake that we make a lot of times when we feel unappreciated is that we start considering separation and divorce, because you know that we are a microwave generation, right? You know, if things don't start coming together right when we think they ought to start coming together, you know, we think that it's easier for us to just walk away from the marriage, you know, but we cannot allow a situation that's flexible to that's fixable, excuse me, to completely destroy your union. It's fixable. So when your car breaks down, you know, do you say, well, baby, we just gonna take the car and we just gonna roll it over in the river and forget about it cause we sick of it? No, you gonna take it to the mechanic and he gonna hook it up to that machine and he's gonna diagnose whatever the issue is with your car. You gonna go buy the part and then you gonna take it back to the mechanic, let him put it on, and then you gonna keep driving your car. So you got to do the same thing with your marriage. You got to diagnose what the issue is, what the problem is, and you all have got to communicate about it. You got to communicate your needs to your husband and work together on a solution before you even think about talking about you getting ready to walk away from the marriage because you feel unappreciated. It's fixable. The next thing that we do that's a mistake when we feel unappreciated by our husbands is that we start seeking validation from other people that's not our spouse. You know, and this is exactly how most extramarital affairs begin. We must remember on tonight that the grass is never greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it at. And so even though sometimes the other side may look appealing, you got to water your own grass. You got to cultivate your own lawn. And you got to understand that you have the power to change your situation at any time. And if your marriage is important to you, then you're going to do whatever you got to do to keep it thriving. And so you got to stay focused in on your own marriage. You got to put the work in your own marriage and stop looking in at Sister Susie's marriage and trying to make comparisons. Water your grass where you are at. Water your grass where you're at, you know, and once again, you got to put in the work. When you don't put in the work, then yes, somebody else's grass may look a little bit greener. But you don't know that, for all you know, that grass could be artificial. It might not even be real. So you got to focus in on putting in the work in your own marriage. The next thing that we do, and this is a big one when it comes down to marriage, because, you know, a lot of times we say that our husbands are our best friend, that they're our lover, they're our provider, they're our men of God. And I see some of y'all post on Facebook and reference them as your king and so forth and so forth. You know how when the birthday come around and the anniversary come around, you know how y'all post on Facebook and say all of these wonderful things about who they are in your life. But yet it's still, if you feel unappreciated, this person that you have declared is your best friend, you're giving them the silent treatment. I'm not understanding that, you know, and the silent treatment is, and for you all that act like you don't know what it is, it's ignoring your husband or giving him the cold shoulder, you know, unresponsiveness. And, you know, and it's also, whether we know it or not, the silent treatment is a form of psychological and emotional abuse. And a few ways, you know, that is abuse is because it's a form of manipulation, which says that when you do what I need you to do, then I'll start back talking to you. It breaks into pieces the opportunity for you all to communicate, because you getting in the bed and you turning to the other side and thinking in your mind, he better not touch me. He better not come on my side of the bed. He better not even blow his breath this way. And not only does it break the opportunity to communicate, but it asserts total dominance over the circumstance while disrespecting your husband at the same time. While many factors take part in causing such behavior and response towards your spouse, it is very apparent that continuing such behavior will lead to deeper wounds and scars in the relationship. So it could be assumed on tonight that the one who gives this hurtful treatment to their husband may not be fully aware of the implications it has towards their future relationship. So I highly recommend to you on tonight, for those of you that are practicing that type of abuse, because it is abuse. Yes, even in Christian homes and marriages, this type of thing is going on. You need to find alternate methods of dealing with the issues and possibly avoid a future meltdown in your marriage. Because a few of the many messages that the silent treatment often gives to your partner is that it literally tells your husband that they're not important to you, because I can't even talk to you, but I'm going to declare on Facebook that you're my best friend. But when you do something I don't approve of, or if I feel unappreciated, then I'm not going to say anything to you. I'm going to give you the silent treatment. But it lets your husband know, or it makes them feel like they're not important to you. It is punishing the other in retributive style. It tells your husband that there is no compromise in the relationship. You're basically saying to him that it's your way or the highway. It brings insecurity and a lack of trust in your marriage. It doesn't just eat away at your marriage, it eats away at your stomach. The stress on your body and the tension in your house is the worst. And a lot of times we think that when we're being silent, that we're punishing our husbands. No, you're abusing them. When you're releasing the silent treatment to them, you're abusing them, and you're stressing out your own self. You're walking around with your stomach tied up in knots because you determined that you're not gonna speak to him and say anything to him until he does what you want him to do. And so, what is the proper response, on tonight? When we think about, not feeling appreciated about what our husbands are doing to us. Well, first of all, you must understand that the silent treatment is not the proper response on tonight. It's not the proper response. It's not the proper action. It's a major mistake, because once again, it's going to melt down at your marriage. So the first thing is, it's important to distinguish between the silent treatment and a time out. Because the silent treatment says, I'm not talking to you. You make me feel unappreciated. You don't help me with the chores. You don't do nothing but sit on the couch when you come home. So I'm going to give you the silent treatment till you do what I want you to do. Well, do you think that he can read your mind? Do you think that he knows what you want him to do? You got to communicate, and you got to tell him, or not tell him, but ask for his help in whatever the case may be. Whatever area that you feel unappreciated, you got to communicate it. Okay? Then the next thing that you got to do is, don't use the silent treatment. If you just need some time away to think some things through, your husband needs to know about it. So you need to go to him and say, baby, look, I'm kind of stressed out. I'm frustrated. I feel aggravated. And so I don't take it out on you. I'm just going to do a timeout for about the next hour. And I'm going to go back here in the room, and I'm just going to get myself together, because I don't want to shut down on you. There's a difference between the silent treatment and a timeout, because a timeout is a good thing And it's taken, when there's conflict within the relationship, and both parties agree that, okay, it's okay for you to go calm down. It's okay for you to go and regroup and pray or do whatever you got to do to come back and talk constructively about whatever the topic or whatever the problem is going to be. But you got to come back to it. You can't just sweep it under the rug. You got to talk. You got to communicate. You got to express how you feel. And once again, you got to do it in a way that extends love and grace at the same time while you expressing to your husband what your needs are. But once you're done with that timeout, you got to come back. And you got to, once again, constructively talk about whatever the problem is. And you got to initiate the reconnect. The silent treatment is punishment. A timeout just says, I need to go regroup. It's not saying that you're going to be walking around the house for 5 days, not saying nothing. So when one person is angry and the other one is, unhappy with something that one or the other has done, you got to learn how to talk it through. You cannot withdraw from your mate. Once again, if you feel like you need a timeout, your husband needs to know you taking a timeout. Baby, I'm going back here to regroup. I need to go pray and get myself together so I don't go in on you. I got to get with the Holy Ghost so I don't go in because I feel unappreciated. I feel like you're not helping me. You're not saying that to him. You're saying that to yourself, but you are telling him that you need to regroup. And so, therefore, you got to understand that you got to come back after you take that time out and you got to bring a resolve to the situation. And you got to come to your husband and say, baby, I feel like, you come home from work and I know you're tired, sweetheart, but maybe while I'm cooking, can you just wash the dishes? Or maybe while I'm cooking and washing the dishes, can you help the children with their homework? That would really help me out. And not only will it help me out, it's going to help you out because I won't be so tired when I come to bed. And so therefore, by the time we work together as a team and I take me a shower and come to bed, then I'll have enough energy to give you what you need as well. That's how you begin to work that thing out. That's how you work it out. I remember one woman that I worked with a long time ago, and her spouse did not speak to her for over a year. Despite the pleas, that she wanted, for him to speak to her, but what she didn't understand was, once you've gone to your husband and you feel like, and play like, I'm the victim in this thing, I'm the victim. But I'm here to tell you that over time, once you have exhibited a pattern of the silent treatment and shutting down, when your husband, you will know when he's had it, because this instant that I'm telling you about with this lady, that husband didn't speak to her for over a year, and they lived in the same household, and he didn't say nothing to her. He didn't speak to her, paid the bills, did what he had to do, but he shut completely down because she had stripped him of everything. She stripped him because of the patterns that she used or the techniques that she used when she would get angry. She would walk around the house 2 or 3 days, not speak to him. And during those times that she wasn't speaking, she wouldn't cook. She wasn't giving him no sex. She wasn't doing nothing. She shut everything down. So when he got tired, he shut everything down. And so it's a little bit difficult when the shoe is on the other foot, right? And so therefore, I'm not saying that what he did was right, but what I am saying that over time, with you reacting the way that you do when you feel unappreciated and making the mistakes of what we've talked about on tonight, it pushes them away to a point to where they don't say anything anymore. And that's the worst position that we can be in as wives, when our husbands are fed up and they've had it so much to where they're not even gonna talk. They don't even have nothing else to say. Okay, well, whatever you do is fine. They don't have anything else to say. So we gotta make sure that when we're feeling unappreciated, we gotta make sure that we are going to our husbands and communicating and expressing it in a way that he will understand it. Go to him in love and express it. Learn how to compromise with one another. Look at your husband's perspective about what he has to say when it comes down to a solution, and stop manipulating and punishing him when you feel unappreciated, or when you feel like he's not doing everything he can do to help you around the house to make it easier. Stop using forms of punishment and abuse, because once again, the silent treatment is abuse. And so when you begin to use the silent treatment, when you go to your husband and you begin to express why you use the silent treatment, you can't go to him and try to make him feel like he's to blame. Because even though he may not be helping you, or even though he may be making you feel unappreciated, you got to go to him in such a way, and you got to express why you did what you did first. Don't go to him talking about well, I wasn't talking to you because you don't never do nothing. I wasn't talking to you because every time you turn around, I'm thinking you done paid this bill, and then the cable off and this off, and you ain't paid it, and blase, blase, blase. You got to go first with accountability, because you're the one done shut down. You're the one ain't spoke to him in 3, 4, 5 days. He's trying to figure out what's wrong with you. He getting into bed at night or touching you on the shoulder, and you moving to the other side of the bed because you're so angry and mad that you don't even want him to touch you. So when you go to him to talk to him and express why you use the silent treatment, you got to go with accountability. You got to go with accountability first. And you got to say, sweetheart, I apologize. I know I hadn't been talking to you, but, I just been frustrated and I've been aggravated. I apologize for not talking to you, but let me express how I feel. And I feel like we're supposed to be a team. I feel like we got these children together. And so, I feel like you should maybe be able to help me, at least do the homework with them when you get home from work, or maybe even, tidy up the house a little bit, or wash the dishes or something to try to help me out. So I'm not so, I feel like I'm just overwhelmed with everything that I have going on. And so when we learn how to go in love, go in compassion, and when we go take accountability for our part, it makes a difference. But we cannot be in a position to where we are shutting down. Those are the mistakes that we make when we feel unappreciated. Walking around with negative attitudes, not speaking, not saying anything, treating one another like you're total strangers. That's not of God on tonight. So I know that there are seasons where you may feel unappreciated, and I know it's not a good feeling. I know it's not a good feeling when you got to work and you got to come home and do everything, and then the other person come home and they may plop down on the couch and get the remote control, and you running around trying to get everything done. But you cannot have the expectation that your husband can read your mind. Whereas you think, oh, he know he need to be helping me. That may be what you're saying, but in his mind, if you don't communicate it, and that's another thing, a mistake we make when we feel unappreciated. We think that they should automatically know what we need from them. You got to communicate what you need. You got to communicate it. And once again, there's a way that you go to communicate it. You don't go rolling your eyes. You don't go doing your hair like this and all of that with all of this body language, because they're going to shut down completely. But once again, when you go, take accountability for you first. That's how you open up the door for him to receive what you're getting ready to tell him about how you feel. So when you go and take accountability and say, baby, I am so sorry, that I had a negative attitude. I'm so sorry that I haven't been speaking to you, but I've just really been overwhelmed with some things. And I just want to share with you what those things are. Can we have a conversation? And if he says yes, you go in and you say to him, I feel like, we're supposed to be a team. So why do I not feel like we're a team? Sometimes I feel overwhelmed, like I'm doing everything, and you just get off the hook and you just come home and, you come home and plop your feet up and watch television. You got to go in love. You got to go in truth. And you got to communicate what the problem is, what the issue is, and then come to a resolve. And then I'm sure if you do it the right way, that your husband will respond. He will respond. It may be over time, he may just simply start helping the children with homework. And then over time, once he sees that you're thankful, and when he does it, say, baby, thank you so much. That helped me out so much. Let him know that you appreciate it. Even though you may feel like, well, this is what you're supposed to be doing anyway. Make them feel appreciated when they do whatever it is that they do. And the more you show appreciation, I promise you, the more that they will do. They'll open up and they'll do it when they feel appreciated, and then they'll start appreciating you. And you'll begin to see a twofold resolution. You'll appreciate him, and then his eyes will become open to everything that you've been doing, and it's going to make him want to help out even more. So on tonight, don't rely on any of the mistakes that I just gave you on tonight. When you feel unappreciated, go to your husband, talk and communicate. It's fixable. It's fixable. Don't keep allowing the enemy to have you all to where you all are distant from one another or disconnected, because when you're angry and you're mad and you're not speaking, you're disconnected. And so go to your husband in love and tell him what you need. You say he's your best friend. Some of you all reference your husbands as your king on social media. Go to your king and tell him what you need. Go to your best friend and tell him what you need. And pray for him that God will begin to help him to even open up his eyes to begin to take the lead even more in the household and be the leader and be the head that he needs to be. And so on tonight, thank you all so much for tuning in and joining with me. I pray that this message has been a blessing to you and your ministry as a wife. So if you're feeling unappreciated, you're overwhelmed and you're aggravated with whatever it is, I want you to go to your husband once again and communicate to him how you feel. Do it in love, compassion, and kindness. And watch how God begins to reconcile some things in your marriage. Watch how God begins to cause all things to work together for your good in your marriage. So on tonight, I pray that you will take the information that I have given you on tonight and that you will apply it in your marriage. And I pray that even on tonight, that for those of you that may be going through a rough season in your marriage, I just want to encourage you to hold on and don't give up. Don't give up. Keep praying and keep believing God. Keep believing God, and let your speech stay in alignment with what you're believing God for. Keep praying for your husband, keep believing in him, and keep extending that grace that he needs in order to be able to grow in his ministry of being the leader in your household. So God bless each of you on tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in and joining with me on tonight for Proverbs 31 wife, daily devotions. God bless each of you on tonight. And it is my prayer that you all will go forth and have a good evening on tonight. And even as we get ready to get off of here on tonight, prepare your husbands, because my husband will be on at 8 o'clock on tonight with the Ephesians 5 daily devotions for husbands. So when y'all get off, go ahead on and give your husbands the phone and tell them to tune in on tonight as my husband positions the men to take their rightful places as husbands. God bless you, and you all have a great evening.